All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone. This Q&A. Two things came in that interesting things came in. One was and we'll see how far we get with both of these. One is it a sin for non-Jews in general, for Noahites, to be jealous of someone? Second part of the question is, if yes, how can someone avoid being jealous? In the third place, in the first place. So for Jews and non-Jews, character traits are important. Now, it could be for non-Jews, it may be a moral imperative, right? Meaning that maybe certain, character traits, that are bad, maybe we'll say they're not necessarily obligated in it, but it's not a good thing to do in general, right? So here the question is jealous. So the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, as it says in Ethics for Our Fathers, says clear that honor, jealousy, and desire can take a person out of this world. Now, some of the commentaries learn that means literally could kill you, could make you lose your portion of the world to come. Because someone who's jealous, what do we see it by? In the Torah, we see it by Korach. Right? And we learn out from Korach that jealousy destroyed him. Korach wasn't a fool. Korach, one of the 20% survived Egypt. He held the Aron, and certain people that held the Aron, the ark, going through the desert, died because they weren't on a high enough spiritual level. So you see, he wasn't a slouch by any stretch, but he was jealous. Why shouldn't he get the high priesthood? Why should Moshe Rabbeinu give it to Aaron, his brother? Why is he showing favoritism? Why does he deserve it? Doesn't Korach have a lineage? Doesn't he have genealogy? He's got a pedigree? Sure. So how could he made such a mistake? So Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory, Torah giant to the last generation, going to everybody in America, said to Parshas Korach, he didn't internalize the message. That's where he failed. In other words, he could have the pedigree, he could have all the knowledge, and he didn't get the message. And that killed him. Killed him. 250 people that he convinced, 250 great people, let's say, that he convinced to go down that path, boggles the mind. If you tell me he didn't know very much, wasn't on such a high level, okay. But here we see jealousy, a problem, major problem. So certainly for non-Jews, not a good character trait to have. Being conceited, not a good character trait to have. There is anger, not a good character trait to have. Even if a person has to discipline their kids, the Rambam says that if you have to show anger and you have to punish, at least you shouldn't feel the anger. You should really, be the greatest actor or actress in the world by feigning anger, faking it, but showing your kids you mean business. Because the Rambam says any tinge of anger, not good. Well, let's just say that. Not good at all. Because a person has to be in control. And you have to be in control at all times, which is seemingly a very hard thing to do. Why? Give an example. Somebody, causes you damage because They're negligent. They're not paying attention. And even if they say, excuse me, or they're sorry, you're annoyed. You go to a store, they bang into you. Someone's texting, they bang into your car. Many things. Many things. So what's the first reaction? What's the knee-jerk reaction? The knee-jerk reaction is you're jumping up and down screaming. You may be, maybe okay over here. Why? Because you're angry. Person caused you damage. So isn't that the normal reaction? It's a normal reaction. Comes on the Chovos Levavos. Says the duties of the heart, gate of bitachon, and the gate of having belief and faith in God. Chovos Levavos there says, not only shouldn't you get angry, you have to realize where everything comes from. And God's using this person against you as a stick. Just like God forbid a person would hit a dog, and it was a dog go after the stick. When really the one wielding the power, that's who the dog should go after. But the Chovos Levavos says what an unbelievable opportunity. God's giving you an opportunity to work on anger. Yeah, but the person just, slammed into me. Caused other damage, whatever it is. So we can't just react. We can't just live in this world and just things are going to happen to us. We're not in control, right? A lot of the time. So if we're not in control, what do we have to do? We have to control how we react, how we're going to respond. Now, a person may think, they say, come on, who's holding by this? Who's holding by this? It's not the majority. Not the majority of Jews by any stretch. Chovos Levavos says this is not just for the righteous. It's for everybody. This is our obligation. You're going to say, wow, got a long way to go. We all have a long way to go. Right? So there is one thing a person can be jealous of. And that is the Torah knowledge of someone else. Or the success, let's say better. Let's say the success of a synagogue. And the person's jealous. Why can't they do that? Why this? Why should they have the success and not this other, synagogue or whatever? That you're allowed to be jealous. Why? Because that's going to help a person work much harder. Much, much harder. It's going to give someone the ability to say, look what this person's doing. So it's not like a person's jealous to say, oh, this person's nothing and I could do this better and all that. Yeah, they're lighting a fire inside you. And that fire says, what's it going to do? It's going to make you want to work harder. Not you looking for accolades. Not you looking for people to pat you on the back. Right? That we're not looking for. But when it comes to learning Torah, and you see someone knows more than you, or, whatever the case may be, so that's something maybe a person can be jealous of and they want to strive to be better. That's a good thing. But in general, I would say probably 9.9 times out of 10, jealousy is bad. Being conceited 100% of the time is bad. The Orthodox in the ways of the righteous says, in the gate of being conceited, it's the base of all bad character traits. All bad character traits. What's the basis? Being conceited. That's where it comes from. That's where it stems from. But someone's going to say, come on, person has to have a certain level of self-esteem. True. Even though my language, Kaufman would say we're living in a cream puff generation. True. Very weak generation. You have to have self-esteem. Right? When it comes to our kids, we have to build them up, and tell them how great they are, even if it's something they did minimal. They help clear the table. You thank them, you build them up, give them self-esteem. So I asked the great rabbi once, if that's what we're supposed to do for our kids, isn't it true what could happen is that they could have, they become conceited. They can think that God's gift to the world. Look at all the praise I have. Look at all the praise I've been given. So the rabbi told me, he says, don't worry, I can help you with that also. He said, that's not the problem. That's not the problem in this generation. Problem in this generation is, one of the problems, is a lack of self-esteem. Rabbi learned under for many years, taught in the yeshiva, or answered questions in the yeshiva, and he said, if it was a little bit too cold where they were learning, guys would say can't learn. If it was too hot, they said they couldn't learn. Cream puff generation. Every little thing, bothers someone. Okay, that's the generation we live in. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter. It's hot, it's cold. Got an obligation to learn regardless. Might be uncomfortable. So in general, jealousy is a horrific character trait. It's a horrific character trait. Because a person can be jealous of someone else because of what they see. But what they see is really a facade. What they see is, person successful, always put together, kids are great and all that. You say, wow, look what this person does. Look at the blessing that they have. A person's jealous of that. But really, people don't know what goes on behind closed doors. In other words, the facade can be unbelievable. The way a person dresses, other things. But there are many other things possibly going on that we don't know about. So the Mishnah Perkei Avos says, right? It says in Ethics of Our Fathers, who's considered rich? Mihu asher, hasameach bechelko. Someone who's happy with what he has. Not that he's desiring other things, right? One of the 10 Commandments, you're not allowed to covet. You're not allowed to desire what your friend has. Right? Not only his property, spouse, other things. Because the more you desire, the more you want. And then if you can't have it, so you do underhanded things to get it. You can't have it permissibly. I'll have it in a forbidden way. God forbid. So these type of things in general are bad. 100% they're bad. So there are other things we have to work on. That there's no question. But I would say like this, 95% of the game is knowing what the right thing to do is to actually be being in the game and to know the bigger, the bigger world outlook, so to speak. Then what do I have to do? Then I have to take that knowledge and then I have to put it into action. Then I have to take what I understand, put it in my heart. So now someone's going to say, that's a real difficult thing to do. Because there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect from the brain to the heart. True? Very true. Knowing what to do and doing it, two different things. Two totally different things. But I would say, Chol Vova says, the gate of in Shar Cheshbon Nefesh, gate of self-accounting. So he says there, he says once a person's given that knowledge, okay, then it's a different world. Now you get greater obligations. But if you don't have that knowledge, so you're walking around in the dark. And if a person had glasses, it's like walking without glasses. Being blind. You don't see, you don't understand. And that's the way of the world. That's most people. They always say some people, the most important question they may ever ask in their lifetime is, I put ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. That's what they're holding. Fantasy. They'll take fantasy. Working on character traits. Who ever heard such a thing? Secular world, I never heard such a thing unless you did something so bad right? You said something you shouldn't have said. Maybe you did something you shouldn't have done. So you get reprimanded for that. That I can hear. But to strive to actually be better, to work on, all kinds of, whatever bad character trait the person may have, doesn't exist. Doesn't exist. So it could be, part of me would say for a non-Jew, why do I have to work on it? It's the way of the world. People have bad character traits. Is that an obligation as a non-Jew? I don't know. Is it something that would make sense logically according to the Torah? For a Jew, 100%. For a Jew, we got to be careful what we say, what we see, how we act, what we think. It's very hard. Very hard to keep everything, intact. When life is hard and we're being tossed around to different things. But you know what? Doesn't matter. God says this is what you got to do. Crunch time. Crunch time. What are you going to do? But then a person can think, I'm working so hard and I'm doing this. Another person seems to have it easy. So that's, that would be bad jealousy. Why do I say bad? Because if someone's got it easy and we know they're not doing the right thing, they're going to be toasted at a certain point. God's going to nail them. So why would I be jealous? But what we said before, we don't know what goes on behind closed doors. So just because it looks like, they have the perfect marriage and everything seems to be going well, and you have no idea. You have no idea. So jealousy in general can eat a person alive. Very, very bad character trait to have. A person can be jealous of someone's car, someone's spouse, their house, other things. Right? But the mission Pirkei Avos, we said, someone who's truly happy doesn't worry about any of this. Not going to be jealous at all. Why? Because they're happy with what they have. They're not lacking anything. Could be they need more money, but they're not lacking anything. God gives them exactly what they need. And they see what they need. Because if they see they need extra things, that means they don't need it in general. Person should get and have what they need. Not necessarily what they think they need. Right? That's the big difference. Necessities we all need. Would it be nice to have some other things also? Maybe. But necessities are what we need. Now again, we're living in the richest generation in the history of man. So our needs have gone skyrocketing. What we think we need. Go back the way the world looked, before World War II, the whole different world. Different world. And expectations. I'm not saying we should go back to that. And suffer like people suffered before. In Europe, there's no food. People were starving. A major difference. They're just, living to eat. They have no food. That's a different world. So even the little that they had, we got to learn to appreciate what we have. Students of the Vilna Gaon, more than 250 years ago, Elijah Vilna sent them on Friday to the hospital to visit people. Why? They were starving, poverty-stricken in many ways, feeling down, but the little that they had, when they went to the hospital, people couldn't eat by themselves, couldn't get out of bed, suffering in other ways. It's a whole different world. Very, very different world. When do we start to appreciate all these things when we don't have them? When all of a sudden things get turned upside down. When a person's sick. When a person's lacking. And they're putting their best foot forward. It's the economy, it's COVID, it's this, it's that. A lot of different things going on. Rav Israel Tauber, blessed memory, said that the generation before the Messiah comes, what's the test going to be? What's the major test going to be? Emunah. Work on our faith and belief in God. Because we're going to see many things that, A, don't make any sense, and B, that we're not in control. Because seemingly, we're going to be able to push buttons. There'll be a lot of things that make life easier, but it doesn't necessarily make a person better. I'm not saying the person has to be poverty-stricken, have no money, living on the street, and all these other difficulties in order to reach spiritual potential. Doesn't have to be that way. Not at all. It's not necessarily something we're striving for. At the same time, we have to know there's a balance. There's a balance. And one of the things Moshe Rabbeinu says by this week's parsha that we're going to read about the sin of the golden calf. And God wants to wipe out the entire nation. Start a new nation with Moshe Rabbeinu. But what does Moshe Rabbeinu say? Unbelievable statement. Moshe Rabbeinu says, God, you're the cause. You're the one who caused it. What do you mean? How did God cause this? So to speak. Because what did God do? God made a promise. And he said, don't worry. When the Jews in Egypt, they're going to suffer. They're going to suffer tremendously, but they're going to come out with great wealth. They're going to take out all the wealth of Egypt. So when they took all the wealth of Egypt, what happened? They made a golden calf. The Moshe Rabbeinu says, you're blaming the Jewish people? You gave them wealth. They know how to handle wealth. Look what happened over here. Someone will say, come on, that was a mixed multitude. That was converts either came out of Egypt or came out of other countries. And it wasn't really the Jewish people, it was them. Even so. So Ramurchai Pogramansky, blessed memory, told my Rebbe that, after the war, that, people suffered so much, there's poverty and other things. He said, the prophecy in the book of Deuteronomy says that, after suffering and going through difficulty, the Jews are going to have great wealth. They're going to have great wealth. So he said, this generation, and he said before it really happened, he said after the war, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be the test of this generation. And that's what happened. Jews got to America. A lot of them got rid of their Judaism. A lot of them made it very well. Became very successful. So what does the prophecy say? Prophecy says, power in my hand did all this, and they forget God. I think I did all this. Self-made man, self-made woman. God, come on. I had someone once tell me, mentioned this before. I had someone once tell me, they said, I became who I am, and successful and all that, despite my parents. Now, what do they mean? They mean that even though the parents, in different ways, issues parenting and whatever. So what happens? They still turned out okay. That was what they meant. They still turned out okay, despite what their parents did. Now, so what was my answer to that? So my answer was, so basically, you have no gratitude towards your parents. Like your parents never did anything for you. You pulled yourself out of the womb. You took care of your needs. Clothing, schooling, university, all these things. You did it yourself. Now, that's obviously not what they meant. I know what they meant. See, that's being conceited. That's saying I did it on my own. I didn't need their help. I didn't need anybody's help. I worked hard. I used my own brain power. That's how I got to where I am. Yeah, they're forgetting the X factor. X factor is God himself, right? But the Gemara says, there are three people involved when it comes to creating a child. A man, a woman, and God. Well, God's not a person, but he puts the soul in the body. So you forget the God element over here. So you say your parents did this and they did that. Maybe they were psychologically inept and other things. Could very well be. Could very well be. So the person meant because of, regardless of what happened or what they might have done, I turned out okay. But I did it on my own. What's the problem with that statement? You didn't do it on your own. No matter what your parents did to you, they helped you. They supported you. You didn't do anything yourself. You didn't feed yourself, give yourself clothing, take care of your needs. You didn't do all that. You didn't do any of that. So where's the gratitude? So I'll say, come on, of course I have gratitude. Without them, I wouldn't be here, right? And without them helping you, you wouldn't be anywhere. You'd be somewhere stuck in a garbage can, dead, probably. Where would you be? That's what they meant. But they're not showing gratitude. Man, someone's going to say, how far does gratitude go? Well, isn't it honoring parents one of the 10 commandments? It's halfway between, right? The first 5 and the last 5. Why? Because it envelops 2 things. It's a mitzvah between man and man, and it's a mitzvah between man and God. Honoring parents like honoring God. Now, what's the major question someone's going to ask? Well, my parents were miserable people. And psychologically, they did this, that, and the other thing. Let's say it's all true. Let's say 100% they weren't good people. They were bad people. They were evil. So there's a machlokes, there's a difference of opinion between between the son of Rabbeinu Asher, the Torah, and the Rambam. What's the difference of opinion? Whether someone who's evil, do I have an obligation? If the parent was evil, do I have an obligation to honor them? What does it mean to honor them? They walk in a room, you stand up. You don't sit in their place. You don't contradict them. In other words, they say something that's wrong. Doesn't matter how egregious it is. You're obligated to say, well, I think the Torah says like this. And I think the Torah says like that. Why do you say it that way? Because you're not allowed to say you're wrong. You're a heretic. You're not allowed to say that. Once you say, well, the Torah says I think the Torah says like this, and I think the Torah says like that, well, guess what? They're going to figure out that what they said is against that. So that's not being direct. Oh, but they're making fun of Judaism, this and that. Okay. That may be true. Maybe 100% true. Does that give me the right to contradict them? To make fun of them? To embarrass them? Not allowed to. Totally not allowed to. They speak. You got to let them finish. Shouldn't interrupt. Shouldn't interrupt anyone speaking in general. It's just rude. Parent all the more so. But see, this is one of the most difficult mitzvahs to do. You don't need me to say that's what the Talmud says. Many of the rabbis say it's like almost an impossibility to honor parents the way they should. There are many examples. One example, one of the rabbis, their mother spit in their face and threw their purse in the river, right, with money in it and other things in it. Can't say anything. Can't speak back. Can't say, you retard, what are you doing? Can't say retard either, right? Say, what are you, mentally challenged? What do you have, a 25 IQ? What are you doing? You just threw all my valuables in the ocean. Forbidden. 100% forbidden. And you know what? It doesn't matter what they did. There are limitations how I'm allowed to react. So you're going to say, Rabbi, this is impossible. Again, Talmud says it's very, very hard. It's a very, very hard mitzvah to do. Because parents don't always do the right thing. However, they do the right thing sometimes. See, parents are always scrutinized. Kids will say you should have done this, you should have done that, it wasn't fair, this wasn't fair. We're human. We made mistakes. We can make egregious mistakes. Just because a person having a hard day, they didn't sleep that much, and the kids are like aggravating them, and they have to lash out. According to everybody, that's forbidden. Kid didn't deserve it. And even if the kid did deserve it, even if the kid deserved it, you're going to scar that kid for life, potentially. Because the kid's not going to get the message. So when a parent has to discipline a child, in general, the discipline, whatever they're going to use as a punishment, has to fit the crime. Person should never, the Rambam and others say, should never give punishment or never react unless they're in control. Now, can it happen we're out of control? Yeah. Can happen. But who are the role models for kids? The most important role models should be their parents. Should be. We're living in a cream puff generation today. Parents get all the blame. And it could be for what they've done, they deserve the blame. Because a lot of self-help books out there. And some of the biggest selling self-help books out there is parenting. It's been lost. Totally been lost. People can have children. That's not so hard in general. Educating children, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. So a parent has to be on call 24/7. It's not an easy thing. Sometimes you're just not in a good mood and different reasons. And they may all be legit, but you got to be careful dealing with kids. Because they pick up things at a young age, all the more so when they're older. When they're older, they can understand things more. When they're younger, they don't get it. They don't get it. So when a parent, says things, yells at them, whatever, they're going to say, oh, it must be I did something wrong. The reality is they may have done nothing wrong. They may have done nothing wrong. The kid gets the wrong message. So, it's a logical thing in general to have respect for parents. Should be a logical thing. Problem is, either we over scrutinize things that they said they've done, or it could be they've done egregious things. Could very well be. A lot of parents do terrible things to their kids. Not necessarily physically, could be psychological. So how they act, they don't show warmth, they don't show kindness, a lot of different things. A lot of different things. And a lot of messed up people. A lot of messed up people out there. Like we said, having a child in general, no big deal. Educating them, treating them the way they should be, that's a whole different thing. All right. So in the secular world, how would parents ever know how to educate their kids? The ones that are not going to read Dr. Spock. And I never heard such a thing growing up. People taking parenting courses. Never heard such a thing. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Sure, it exists somewhere. But in the secular world in general, parenting courses? What do I need a parenting course for? I do okay as a parent. You want to know if you did good as a parent? Go ask your kids. Go ask your kids if you did a good job or not. They're gonna be the ones to know. Or your spouse will know. So we're our own worst enemy. But the bottom line is, the ones the kids should look up to the most are parents. And what happens to parents? Let's say, not good parents. So you have to find other role models. Sometimes people find it in a teacher, and find someone else as a mentor. But if people don't get that, It was like, left aside like yesterday's garbage. Fortunately, I've heard many, many stories, from people. It's tragic. It's very tragic, in many ways. So I would go on record, as we are recording here, I would go on record to say there are some people who shouldn't be parents. They should never be parents. Nothing to talk about. Because of the way they raise kids. What do you think? They ever took a course? They just react however they react. Maybe they react the same way the parents reacted. They just perpetuate negativity. Very well could be. But see, even so, there's a difference of opinion. It might be that even if the parents are evil, considered evil, it may be that you wouldn't have an obligation to stand up for them when they walk in a room, or to have that level of honor. But you can't disrespect. You can't make fun of them. You can't belittle them or embarrass them in public. You tell me they really deserve it? It's a hard mitzvah to do. Make no mistake, it's a hard mitzvah to do. And very few people are successful the way they should be in honoring parents. They think this is what the Torah expects. Yeah, it is. And there are high levels to reach. And it could be, how could someone even want to do this if whatever they did in their parents' eyes was always bad? Or they never got complimented. They didn't feel loved. Yeah, that's going to be hard. Not to mention if they did other things. Very, very hard. Very, very hard. And again, I can tell you, not just about parenting, but other things. When I finally saw what the real world was, my early 20s, I said either I have to see the other side, i.e., the Orthodox world, Jewish Orthodox world, or I have to see a shrink, and the whole world is messed up. Because some people may say, well, it might be a good thing for me to see a shrink. Could be. Right? But that was it was one way or the other. That's the way I saw the world. I said, the world doesn't make sense. So many different ways. I got the yeshiva open up my eyes. Open up my eyes in a lot of different ways. And I wish I would have known certain things when I was younger. But even knowing, I'm not saying it would have been easier in other ways. But at least you understand why things possibly could happen. So, there are two things going on over here. I have a mitzvah between man and man. I have a mitzvah between man and God. Right? When it comes to honoring parents and respecting them. Right? And some people will say, yeah, my parents were bad. They were evil. They this, they that. They don't deserve respect. Well, at the very least, they brought you into the world. At the very least. For that reason alone, you have to show gratitude. You're right. They say this, they did that, they did that. You're right. 100%. They may be bad people. Doesn't mean I can belittle them. Doesn't mean I can make fun of them or embarrass them in public if it still be possible. You're going to say, but that's what they deserve. Maybe. But doesn't matter. You know why? Because in God's eyes, you're given exactly what you need. We may think otherwise. Doesn't matter. Someone who asks, is it a sin for a Noahide to go to an anti-Semite or a gay doctor? Well, I wouldn't say go to an anti-Semite doctor. I wouldn't trust what he's going to tell me. You go into someone who's gay? Yeah, I try and stay away from that also. Right? Even for a non-Jew. There are plenty of doctors out there. What happens? Oh, this will be a good question. What happens? Person has to go to a specialist. And the only specialist around is someone who's gay. They ought to go to them. So you'd be allowed to go to them. Would it be better to go to someone else? Yeah. But by going to them, doesn't necessarily mean you're saying what they're doing is right and how they live their lives is right. You're not saying that. Well, I would say it's better, let's say you had a choice. You had a choice to, go to a certain store. And I could go to one store, might be, a lot cheaper. Or I could go to a store, owned by a Jew, and even though it's more expensive, should I go there and help the Jew make a living? So yeah, it's better to help the Jew make the living. Do I have to put myself in the poorhouse to do it? No. I'm not obligated to do. Right? But at the same time, it'd be a good thing. It'd be a good thing to help them. No question. So we got to be careful, who we take services from by what they represent. Now, if a person has no choice, okay. You have no choice. So a person had to go to a doctor, and the doctor's a specialist, they happen to be gay, or she has to be a lesbian or whatever. Right? Is it better to go to such a person? No. Just because of what they represent. Is it forbidden? I wouldn't say it's forbidden. Not going to go that far. But if you have no choice, I would say it's better not to go to them. Plenty of other doctors around. But someone's going to pin me down and say, that's the only doctor, that's the best doctor in this field. Okay. So for Jew or non-Jew, you can go to them. That wouldn't be an issue. Right. There might be an issue with the person of the opposite sex and being alone with them, even if they're a doctor and professional and different things. Okay. That might be a different issue. Not talking about that. Talking about in general. Going to somebody that doesn't hold your values. Which gets into a whole other discussion. People will say, well, you only hang out, with people like yourself. You're right. We're not open-minded. No one is claiming to be open-minded. We want to talk to people that think like us, that dress like us, that act like us. They want to go in the right direction. Now, there are times we're not going to be able to do that. You have to go to certain offices, different things. You may not have a choice. You have to see other people. Fine. I remember once, neighborhood I used to live in, someone came and they looked around. They saw, other people wearing black hats, bigger ones, smaller ones, long coats, short coats. Like, wow, this is like a ghetto. I said, I know, it's great, isn't it? We should be back in ghettos. Be with our own people. Right? You don't find anti-Semitism amongst Orthodox Jews. You don't find crime amongst Orthodox Jews. You can walk out late at night, within reason, right? Within these communities. I'm not going to say nothing happens, but compared to the quote unquote, the outside world, the real world, nothing in comparison, nothing. Orthodox Jews are not going to be petty thugs. Not going to be beating up people and doing other things. And if they look Orthodox, they do that, that's a different issue. They're not really Orthodox. But crime in Orthodox communities doesn't really exist. Can there be other things that can happen? Yeah. Every community has issues. But if you look at the bigger scheme of things, when it comes to that, we don't have any issues. We don't have any bigger issues, crime issues. I'm not going to say nothing exists. Right? But petty crime doesn't exist. Someone's going to come out and kill someone. It's pretty amazing. And it goes against the nature of a Jew for a Jew to kill another Jew. Goes against the nature. Can it happen? Yeah. Because if they're not steeped in Torah mitzvahs, then yeah. Then in many ways they have the status of a non-Jew. So they can act like the outside world. But a person steeped in mitzvahs is not going to happen in general. Not going to happen. Because they live in a certain way. They think a certain way. Here in Israel, a car gets stolen 99.9% of the time. Who's it stolen by? An Arab. You say, oh, that's a racist thing to say. That's the reality. Everyone who lives in Israel knows that. Are there secular Jews that also steal? Yeah, there are. Break into houses? Yeah. But when something happens, it's usually not a Jew doing it. Usually. Majority of the time. Because it's not his nature. Unless he's a totally secular Jew, has nothing, no connection to Torah mitzvah. Then I can hear. Then there's crime. Then there are other things going on. Yeah. So in secular cities, you got problems. You definitely have problems. Crime, other things. Why? Because they don't live like Jews. They don't have the same values. They're secular values. So they get involved in drugs and other things. True. But someone who's holding by Torah mitzvahs, it's a different world. Totally different world. Because if they're doing what they should do, and they think the way they should, there's no reason whatsoever it should ever happen. Ever. Any religious community I've ever lived in. Was there any petty crime? Not that I remember. People stealing other people's cars and this and that, defacing property? No. In general. Not saying 100% doesn't exist. But see, if you have the right values, not going to happen. Should never happen. But for a Jew even to kill another Jew, they get in a fight, whatever, should never, ever happen. Seems like it's an impossibility to happen. So how could it be? Because they don't act like Jews. They don't learn Torah. They don't have the same values. They have the values of the street, okay? Just because they're Jewish, doesn't matter. You have the values of the street. You're like the streets. You have Jewish values, and you're working hard on yourself. You don't have the values of the street. It's a different world. It's a totally different world. Someone asked, can an Ohide study oral Torah? No. They can only study what applies to them. So technically, someone told me that a great rabbi said that there might be certain parts of oral Torah that a non-Jew could learn. Right? The laws of damages or their own laws. Not delve into it the same way a Jew does. First of all, I never saw it in writing. Because I don't know it to be true. But even, I can tell you if I went to my Rebbe and asked him this question. And I would say, well, can they learn this part, this tractate or this part or whatever? That applies to non-Jews, right? That would apply to the Noahide laws, let's say. Or other things. Right? I can tell you, he's going to look at me and say, nope. It's off limits. As I always say, if you tell somebody that, it's okay, it's not a problem, etc., people aren't going to have such a desire to do it. But if you tell someone, no, whatever you do, you shouldn't do it, it's going to have a negative effect and this and that, that's exactly what they want to do. Right? So we want to make clear there's a difference between Jews and non-Jews. There's a difference. We're obligated to all the mitzvahs, non-Jews aren't. And there are things that belong to us a non-Jew shouldn't touch. Shouldn't have anything to do with. Shouldn't straddle both worlds. So again, it could be. I didn't see it inside. It could be, some may say, maybe there are certain parts of Talmud a non-Jew could learn. That would apply to them. But they certainly can't learn it like a Jew, no question. But see, when I hear questions like this, it makes me think that, well, non-Jews can't learn anything. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. We can't learn the same things. We don't have any holidays. This, that, true. You know what? There's a lot you can learn. Plenty. I could be, I always say I could keep people busy the next 250 years with what they're allowed to learn. So why is it so many times I hear non-Jews want to take what Jews have. Because I understand. I understand Mayim Genuvim Yim Taku. Stolen waters, right, are the most sweetest. When you can't have something, that's when you desire to have it. Now again, I'm not saying everybody does that. But I've seen over and over again. They want to Judaize being the Noahide. And let's make clear, they're Jews or non-Jews. Non-Jews should keep what they have to keep. Jews should keep what they have to keep. And they shouldn't overlap. Yeah, and if any non-Jews out there think, oh, there's really nothing to learn, yeah. Send me an email, send me a text. I'll tell you what you can learn. Plenty of things. Plenty of things. Keep you busy for another 150 years. With plenty of depth. But things that belong to Jews should stay by Jews. Now, that's what I would answer. Yeah, any other, there was another question here. So we answered about basically being jealous, spoke about that. Someone asked, is there a difference that we should see ourselves created in the image of God? Everyone's created in the image of God. Everybody, Jew and non-Jew. So then the question was, when should we see ourselves as nothing? So, we are the greatest of creation, greatest of God's creation, mankind. If we act the way we should, serve Him the way we should, we're the greatest of creation. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, then the animals are better than us. Why are animals better than us? Because they were created first. So, on the one hand, we have control over animals. We seem to think we have control over just about everything, in this world and in space and all that. At the same time, we have to realize we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. So we always say, you live in a small town, in a city, in a state, in a country, in a continent, on a planet, in a galaxy, getting smaller. So we have to realize God is awesome. Look what He does. And He controls nature and all that. I can't do that. We have no power like that. So at the same time, we are the epitome of creation. We're the greatest of creation. But we have to realize, even if that's true compared to this world, we also have to feel pretty small. That's not a contradiction. We can, take an extra oomph in our step, and we can say, wow, look how great man is. Look what man has done for the world, and all kinds of different things. Positive, plenty of negative also, right? But a lot of positive things mankind has done. Okay. Does that mean we're the ultimate? No, not at all. But you think that's not a contradiction? We can feel we're God's greatest creation, but we can also feel like a piece of dirt compared to Him. We can feel both at the same time without being totally dejected and thinking, oh, I'm just worth nothing, whatever. What do you mean? Greater than animals? Unless we act like animals. If we act like animals, we're no better than animals. If we subjugate our bad character traits and our desires and work on them, then we're greater than animals. But at the same time, we have to realize where we come from. We have to realize that many, many things we're totally not in control of. And we should feel very small. But you don't feel so small that you can't function, that you can't do anything. It's like, oh, why would God care about me for this? Or why would He care about that? He's so lofty. You're right. God is all out there. No question about it. Question is, I still have to serve Him. Even if I'm His greatest creation, I can have a drop, of self-esteem over here thinking, well, I am the pinnacle of creation. I am the greatest of creation in the world. True. But we have to know who we really are. And who we really are compared to God and how He runs the world, we're pretty small. We're very, very small. Now, is it a contradiction to feel both at the same time? No. I can feel both at the same time. I just have to realize that, yeah, even though we're creating God's image, what am I doing to perpetuate that? How am I living my life? That's a different thing. That's a different thing. I can feel good I'm creating God's image. We have control over animals and this and that. But at the same time, I can also feel small. Right? It's not a contradiction. Definitely not a contradiction on that. Someone asked in a JIT who was a Jew in training, right, employed as a caregiver for a secular Jew, purchase non-Jewish non-kosher food for them. No. A Jew has to keep kosher. Just because they may not want to keep kosher, right, that doesn't mean you're allowed to serve them non-kosher food. Right? Even if you were a Jew, doesn't matter. If you were a Jew, you couldn't serve them non-kosher food. A non-Jew should also not serve them non-kosher food. Why? Very simple. Torah says you're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of someone. So even if you're a caretaker, you're putting a stumbling block in front of them. So they should eat kosher food, not allowed to serve them non-kosher food. Now the question would be, they say, well, if you don't serve me non-kosher food, find another job. Could be, you have to find another job. Jew cannot eat non-kosher. Non-Jews not allowed to serve non-kosher food. Right? Could be for a Jew even, whatever. It's putting a stumbling block in front of them, in short. There's another case, I'll just throw this out there. Right? They buy a secular Jew. They come to your house. You know they're not going to make blessings. Are you allowed to serve them food? It's kosher, obviously. Because if you give it to them, you hand it directly to them, what are they going to do? They're going to take it and eat it. They're not going to make a blessing. Even if you ask them, they're not going to make a blessing. So what happened? If you don't give it to them, they're going to get offended. What? You're not going to give me food? Let's say a secular Jew comes, I don't know, fixes your washing machine, dries, says, can I have a drink? Can you get me a drink of water? Something like that. So, the question is, how am I allowed to give it to them? They're not going to make a blessing. It says, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, a blessed memory. The best way to do it is to put it in front of them. Don't give it to them directly. Let them take it for themselves. If there's no other way, you pass it to them, then that's okay. Why? Because they're going to hate Judaism more. 100% they're going to hate Judaism more. That you're not allowed to do. That you're not allowed to do. Right? Because that's considered putting a stumbling block in front of someone else. Now, the question is, does that apply to a non-Jew? That's already a question. It's already a much bigger question. Could be it only applies to a Jew, not a non-Jew. Right? But I would say, even as a JIT, it shouldn't be done. You're putting a stumbling block in front of them. Tell me, the rabbinical authorities hold that doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Could be. I'm not going to deny that. Could very well be. Right? At the same time, right? That's putting the stumbling block in front of a non-Jew. Let's say better. That's the question. If a non-Jew, could you put, I don't know, an idol that a non-Jew worships, could you put it in front of them and then they're going to bow down to it? Well, that's not allowed to do. But you're putting a stumbling block in front of them. So that's the question. I ought to put a stumbling block in front of a non-Jew. Put it in front of a Jew, that you're not allowed to do. Even a non-Jew wouldn't be allowed to do that. Putting a stumbling block in front of a non-Jew, that's the bigger question. That's a much bigger question. So that's why I'm saying that. Someone said, can you go and pay respects to a Jew's grave? Yeah. Even if you're not part of their community, 100%. Yeah, that's not a problem. That wouldn't be an issue. So, but if a non-Jew wanted to go to a righteous person's grave, say Psalms there, whatever, they're allowed to. That's not a problem. Definitely not a problem. Any other questions? It's good to see trolls are back. Yeah. A Jewish chef can't work in a restaurant when they cook non-kosher, right? Jewish chef cannot cook, can't work at McDonald's, right? Can't serve milk and meat to people, right? Even to non-Jews, because the prohibition to cook it, prohibition to eat it, prohibition to get benefit from it. So here that would be forbidden. So working in a non-kosher restaurant is a problem, right? Even if it's not milk and meat together, maybe a Jew's gonna be there. So you say, I didn't tell them to come in, I didn't tell them to eat. Well, you're right. That may not be your problem, but you're working there. So that's a problem. Right? And working in a place and getting benefit from non-kosher food, that's forbidden. Doing business non-kosher food is forbidden. So that would have to change at some point. That would have to change. Yeah, any other questions? Can a Jew be alone, a JIT alone be with a non-Jew of the opposite gender? Yeah. The laws of being alone, with the person of the opposite sex, as an adult, or let's say at least someone of the opposite sex, let's say is 9 or 10 years old or something like that. So then for a Jew, that would be forbidden. That wouldn't apply to a non-Jew. Right? The things that apply to a non-Jew would be, different forbidden relationships and immorality. This would be all right. Even if nothing happens. That wouldn't be an issue. A Jew is a different issue. Jews not allowed to be with someone of the opposite sex unless, let's say the person was married, their spouse is in the city, they could come back anytime. That would be an issue. That wouldn't be an issue. You leave the door open, right? But if they know the spouse is only coming home later at night, and let's say a plumber comes in, 10 o'clock in the morning. So the spouse is out, won't be back till 4 o'clock, easy. So you have to leave the door open. Or you have to call a neighbor and say, can you come in anytime? Just, walk in the door, it's open. Something like that. There are ways to get around the issue. But generally, being alone with somebody, the opposite sex, by themselves, yeah, that's forbidden. That's forbidden for a Jew, doesn't apply to a non-Jew. Yeah, any other questions? All right, so no other questions. Then I'm going to sign out. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wishing everyone a good beginning of the day.